All right, hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diaries podcast, show the human stories behind indie game development. This is Han, your loyal Indie Diaries, and this is Indie Diary number 79 with David and Jeremy, two Canadian TV writers turned game developers. Very interesting, very lovely guys, and by the way, thank you for what you comment to the show. This is one that I hope you will enjoy. You will also notice this intro is slightly shorter, and that is because I want you guys to get into the episode much quicker from now on. So, let's get into it. Indie Diary number 79. All right, hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast. This is Antti, your loyal Indie Diarist, as you probably have heard from the intro. I don't know why I keep repeating myself twice, but here with me are David and Jeremy, and this is going to be a very special episode, but I'll let them say why, and actually, I'll just hand it over to you guys. So please say a few things about yourselves, what you do, where you're based, and what you're working on right now. And we'll start with David, maybe, who's on the left side of my view.
Sure. Well, hello. As you just said, I'm David. I'm based in Toronto, Jeremy as well. My day job is working actually in film and television. I work for Bell Media, which is Canada's largest private broadcaster, and I work in the original programming team doing strategic planning. But I've got a side hustle with Jeremy creating IP. Usually we do linear IP like film and TV, but as will become clear over the course of this conversation, we've actually been working on a video game named Dumb Sherlock. So that's what brings us here.
Mm-hmm. And over to you, Jeremy, now.
Great. And by the way, Anne, this is why you're repeating yourself twice, is because there's two of us. So
yeah,
you got to double up on everything.
That's a good way to put it. I also do it when I only have one guest. So that's I don't know what the excuse is there.
Well, yeah, I can't help you on that one. But so yes, I'm Jeremy. I also live in Toronto, grew up in Montreal, went to high school with David. That's how we met. Did you say that, David? I wasn't listening. But yeah, I'm a longtime, sketch and improv comedian, performer, writer, mostly in Toronto, although a little bit elsewhere. I started at the UCB Theatre in LA, in the Second City here in Toronto, and then basically, like David said, we've been writing stuff, scripted, unscripted, and we had this idea we liked that we wrote as a sitcom, and we optioned it, but it wasn't really the right time to make it as a sitcom, and we liked the idea. We didn't want to let go of it, and we said, let's turn it into a game, and that's what brings us here today. Yeah,
and I think that's a very interesting premise, and we'll dig into it throughout the course of the episode. But one thing that you mentioned in your first email to me was that despite zero programming or game design experience, you're trying to work on this video game, but you recently released a playable prototype to surprisingly positive fanfare. As you mentioned, so that was really interesting to me. But we'll dive into Dumb Sherlock and what you guys are doing with your game, possibly as a way to promote your work as TV artists or TV writers and TV creatives in a way. But before we get into the meat of the episode, I think we can start with a little prologue segment, which I like to call an icebreaker. It's kind of a speed dating section, except I will not be picking any one of you two to go on a date with at the end. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, Jeremy. I know that you were expecting more from me.
Okay, I'll get over it. It's fine.
Yeah, but we'll get there. But we can reconnect after this call. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, so I'm going to ask you as many questions as I possibly can in just 60 seconds. And I want you guys to answer as quickly and concisely as you possibly can. I suppose both of you are gamers, so some of these questions will apply to you, even though you're not game devs necessarily. So let's see. I'm going to start. So as I start the music, I want to ask you, what is the first game you ever fell in love with?
Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Okay, no, that's nice. If you could only play one genre for the rest of your life, Jeremy, what would it be?
Ooh, I like a big open world game.
Okay, that's...
I know, it's not exactly the genre.
That's all right.
Close enough.
It's a sub. Well, it's a method. I say it's a way of making games. What's the most underrated game everyone needs to play, David? This is a difficult one.
Diablo 2.
All right, yeah, why not? Yeah. Jeremy, pitch your game in one sentence.
So Dumb Sherlock is a 2D point-and-click adventure where you play as Dumb Sherlock and his loyal partner Watson, the world's dumbest amateur detective solving the world's stupidest mysteries.
Love that. Okay, and David, if you snack during gaming, what's your favorite gaming snack?
I try not to snack during gaming, but I usually prefer things on the salty side.
Okay. And Jeremy, what's your guilty pleasure game? Something you love but know isn't perfect.
Oh, it's probably this game I play on my iPad called Brawl Stars, which isn't good, but I just waste like 10 minutes in it.
Okay, yeah, no, fair. Everybody knows Brawl Stars, I think. But we are at time now. So actually, I think we got pretty much through all of the questions. The next one was going to be pineapple on pizza, yes or no. You're Canadians, so I don't know.
Ooh,
resounding no for me.
Well, yeah, pineapple on pizza did start in Canada, so it is a point of national pride, I suppose. That said, I would never order it personally, but I don't begrudge anyone else.
David, you were shaking your head too. So.
It's a point of national shame in my eyes.
All right, okay.
Fair.
Perfect. So isn't that a great way to start this episode? Someone who agrees with me.
Speaking of national shame, onto Dumb Sherlock.
Yeah, but possibly not. I hope you don't make that one a point of national shame. Yeah. So now we can. Now we've gone through the icebreaker segment. We can relax a little bit. We can slow down, and we can enter into the more say more meaty part of the episode, but also more introspective, I would say, which is talking about the origins of your journey or your creative journey in a way. So what would you say is your earliest or fondest memory that has to do with video games? And we can both of you can answer. So maybe we'll start with Jeremy.
Nice. I was hoping it was me. I think this might sound corny, but one of my favorite earliest video game memories was playing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like side scroller game with my brother, who's about 2.5 years older than me. And so like other video games we would play, you know, if it was like Sonic, I would have to be Tails, who kind of doesn't get to do as much, or like, you know, Luigi in Mario. But I think in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, I was Donatello, my brother was Leonardo, but they both kind of, you know, get to do everything. And so it was maybe the first time that I felt like more of an equal than, you know, a little idiot that he kind of yells at.
Oh no, that's lovely besides the idiot part. And David, what about you?
Well, I think I'd go back to the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I used to occasionally rent a Nintendo 64 from Blockbuster. And so that was really the first game that I felt an intense emotional attachment to the point where I actually was quite upset when it came time to have to return the N64 to Blockbuster. I don't know what it is about that game, but I just felt such a bond to it, and it left a deep impression.
Nice, yeah. Well, some really nice origin stories for you guys there. And would you say, like, those early games that you used to love, or even the games that you love in general, do you think they're influencing Dumb Sherlock or the way you're approaching Dumb Sherlock now?
Oddly, I wouldn't say those two that we answered really did, but I think like another early game that I do remember playing a lot were the old LucasArts games, like the Sam and Max ones, especially the Monkey Islands too. But really, the Sam and Max ones hit for me, and I think those are, you know, point and click adventures with a lot of humor, and so I think those do align a lot with what we're making now.
I see a lot of Double Fine and style in there too, like maybe Grim Fandango or Full Throttle, maybe more Full Throttle than Grim Fandango in a way, but yeah.
Little Leisure Suit Larry thrown in there just for kicks.
Yeah.
You didn't ask about an early scarring from a video game, and that would be playing Leisure Suit Larry too young. But you know, I'm still a mostly well-adjusted human now, so it's okay.
Okay, yeah, well, that's good to hear. But obviously, usually this question is, when did you realize you wanted to make games? But in your case, I mean, you're working in TV. When did you realize you wanted to write for TV? Actually, you wanted to try that career. What was the aha moment for you guys? We can do both. So maybe David, this time it's your turn.
Sure. Well, I think Jeremy might have a different path into it because he pursued it stateside, whereas I kind of abandoned it for a few years in my early 20s. But I've always had a creative itch, and scratching it's kind of not an option. And looking out at the whole range of options for writers as a younger person, say, 15 years ago, not to date myself, between writing a novel or writing for TV, I chose TV because probably my most sort of preferred content comes on TV. I'm a huge fan of The Simpsons and Seinfeld and other kind of classics of the sitcom genre, and those have really shaped my sensibility as a writer and my tastes as a consumer of media. So it just felt like a natural fit, given that I consumed enough TV that the medium and its structures kind of came more or less naturally as a writer. And also, although this premonition turned out to be wildly incorrect, I figured there was probably more money writing for TV than writing, say, novels or poetry or anything else. But as I said, I probably, I definitely got that one wrong, and I probably should have gone into writing poetry if I really wanted to make money.
Which is wild, because I always hear that poetry makes less than the novels. So, well, if poetry makes more than TV, then that is worrying indeed. What about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to David, like I was raised on The Simpsons and all sorts of TV that I fell in love with young. And then, after we actually both started doing comedy together in or around the end of high school, and then we both went to the University of Toronto and kept doing comedy there. But while there, I was pursuing an English degree, and it was mostly just reading like boring Shakespeare and stuff. No offense to
Yeah, we
Shakespeare.
love
Yeah,
Shakespeare,
actually a
but
little
yeah.
bit of offense to Shakespeare. Sorry, can I swear on this? We didn't ask
of
that
course,
first.
it's fine.
Good. Well then, Shakespeare.
Great.
But yeah. So I sort of like just I was getting kind of bored and frustrated by that type of writing, and I really wanted to do something more creative. And I performed a lot when I was younger, and so yeah, so I went to the States. I started pursuing comedy, studied at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, which, if your audience isn't aware of it, it's, at least at the time, was, I think, the best place for comedy. And then, yeah, it kind of, I don't know, as I got older, I was less interested in performing on stage and more interested in the writing. And so kind of shifted that way. And yeah, the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah. Well, and at some point in that history, I would say you decided that from doing TV, you wanted to turn an unmade sitcom into a video game. So how did that happen, and what was the process that led you to say, "Oh, we should make a game out of this"? Any one of you can reply.
Well, I think, Jeremy, you had the original idea to do this, so why don't you field it?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, we wrote this script, I don't know, a few years ago, kind of right after the pandemic. We just wanted to write something silly and fun that, like, didn't dwell on like the horrible things going on in the actual world.
Yeah.
And so we wrote the script called Dumb Sherlock, which, again, if we did explain the premise, but it's also right in the name. It's the Sherlock Holmes story, but set in modern time. But he's dumb. And we really liked it, and we had a lot of fun writing it and sort of developing the world and the characters. So then, when it ultimately didn't sell to a network or anything, and the rights reverted back to us, we kind of just didn't want to let it die. We really thought there was still some meat on the bone there. And I think also around that time, I had been like, watching some people play like the Nancy Drew video games on Twitch, and just like being absolutely frustrated by the jankiness of those games. And I was like, hey, we could make a janky game out of our idea.
On purpose, by design. Yeah.
Well, by design, and also by us being limited by our skills. So yeah, I sort of suggested that idea to David, and he was into it, like, right away. He was like, yeah, that's good. We should do that. We kind of, we did our due diligence too. We did some research, and we, saw what else was out there and what we would need to do. We actually both ended up, again, we have no actual programming experience or anything, but we both took like I think it was maybe a 6-week class, like, one day every week. So not very many classes, but an intro to Godot.
Oh, right.
Just to like sort of understand the engine. I would say neither of us came out of that really being able to build a video game, but
Mhm.
at least we understood like somewhat what the process was behind it. And then we kind of, yeah, just from there hit the ground running and taught ourselves. David does most of the programming. He can talk more about that. I do the art for the game. I'm not a professional artist, so it doesn't look, it's not going to look like a AAA game, but we've been told there's a certain charm to my ugly art.
Well, that's the best compliment you can get, I guess, from as a non-artist. But well, yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm sure Godot is the engine of my choice, and I love it. I love it to bits. All of the games that I've made so far, there were small games for game jams, but all the ones that I made were all in Godot. It's fascinating and such, and also honestly, for a point and click, I do expect that it is still challenging, but I do suspect that the logic is kind of limited in what you need to actually do to get things to work. It's just about coming up with the puzzles. That's probably the most challenging bit in a point and click game. I wouldn't know how to come up with chapter 2 of Grim Fandango, I can tell you that much, though the casino there was a bit too much, I guess, in some ways. Absolutely wild. But anyway, yeah, and speaking of that, the challenges and such, like, as a writer, I think I know the answer to this, but what was the biggest hurdle for you getting into making a game? Like the jump between writing and game development, what did you find the most challenging, as the most challenging thing, besides probably programming, which I suppose is the technical aspect that kind of was a big hurdle?
I think probably just conceptualizing stories in a non-linear way. TV's so linear. I mean, there's one path through a particular TV show, whereas games obviously are non-linear to a large extent. And I think that's what I've taken away from the market research we've done into this genre. People do want replayability and non-linearity, and so just wrapping our heads around that as storytellers for the first time has probably been the biggest conceptual challenge. I mean, the programming stuff certainly difficult, but there's good resources out there,
Yeah,
and good tools you can use to help you through that. Whereas the storytelling really does come back ultimately to the writers figuring it out for themselves.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think also we had like a fully written television script of the story we wanted to tell, and so we had to convert that to being a video game script, and it was an interesting process, but like we had to, the expression in writing is "kill your darlings,"
yes,
and we definitely had to kill some darlings, but as we were out there murdering, we also discovered that it's definitely an opportunity to add new darlings, if you will, to find new jokes and new ways we can tell the same story, but with diversions and different choices the player can make, and in the end, yeah, it's actually it gave us opportunities to just have more jokes and to really pack it with like the stuff we love.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And honestly, as someone who kills his darlings a lot, not in the literal sense, I
Oh yeah, I'll see there.
no, cut. Yeah, no, I can relate. I mean, usually killing your darlings in writing means that you make space for something else or that you optimize something. So it is painful in the moment, but then, I mean, you kind of come to terms with it and realize that usually it makes things better. It's a tough choice to make, but one that we have to make all the same. But yeah, no, really, really inspiring stuff. Really inspiring to hear all of this. And I feel like you're right. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there for branching narratives, especially in games. I used it before. I used something called Inkle, Inkle Writer, and Ink, which is like a little engine, but it's a text-based engine, and it's got its own little programming language. But you can build branching narratives in there really effectively, and it's made for people who really want to put story before anything else. And it's made by the same developers of Heaven's Vault and other games, obviously, that they've made. I think Sorcery 1 and 2. But yeah, if you haven't looked into that, I do recommend it. Really good tool. But you mentioned that, again, going back to your initial email, you mentioned that surprisingly positive fanfare. So what would you say has been, to date, one of the most memorable reactions to Dumb Sherlock? This is a very personal question, I guess, so both of you can...
I mean, I think just that it's consistently making people laugh, and the concept is usually very well and immediately received. So So that's been encouraging for me because I wasn't sure if we'd be able to translate our television writing prowess into game development mediocrity, but I think we've actually even delivered something that's pretty good given our skill base, and that it's our first game. So there's maybe not one in particular, though. A couple that stand out are usually the kind of like turd sandwich type critiques where someone gives you a soft compliment and then sort of sandwiches like their real feedback in there. Someone told us that they really hated the puns in the game, which I think I took to heart. Maybe Jeremy has different feelings about that. But,
yeah, I mean, I took it to heart in that I said, okay, so you're saying we should put more puns in.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, to add to what David said, like we made this, you could call it a demo. It's really more of like a prototype. We're not like we'll probably we'll probably put out another actual like shinier demo at some point before we release the full game. But this was kind of more like proof of concept, just get some feedback, see what people say, and we were surprised. But yeah, people found it fairly playable. They mostly enjoyed the writing, maybe not the puns, which again, I take that as a challenge to add more in there. But yeah, it's nice to like, when you work on something in a vacuum or just David and me working on it, it's hard to know that like it's something people will actually like at all, and especially since we've never done it before, and just to hear people are able to get through it, and they like clicking on the things. So it's motivation to keep going and to make the next version of it and make it better. And yeah,
and I like that because it ties very well into the next question that I want to ask you. But actually, even before we get to that, I'm curious to know, like, obviously you release a prototype and such, but you're working on the game actively. What would you say is one mechanic or something, one idea that you've implemented that you're particularly proud of in Dumb Sherlock?
I would say the underpants feature that we've built.
Yeah,
I know Jeremy was going to take it there. We want to have broader character customizations. You can change his pose or whatever. That ties into the number of points that you've accumulated in the game. But for now, we built a kind of minimum viable version of that feature where you basically get new underpants for Dumb Sherlock.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's very silly when you put them on. Also on the screen, there's a like big yellow sign that pops up that says "Doink" for no reason, and it's just it's pure silliness. You never see them outside of the closet, of course. When you're playing, it's just you have to imagine they're under his pants.
I think I think that's genius, actually. Yeah, because you don't see them, but you're collecting them. It's in a way, it's kind of parody of like collectibles in games. I wouldn't even be mad if they were the only kind of outfit customization option that you had in the game, because that would already send some sort of message. But yeah, you obviously have other plans. So yeah.
Well, maybe. Again, we're limited by our skill set, and of course, changing the character's look it's kind of thorny because then you got to do it in cutscenes and you got to have it like consistent over different scenes and areas and whatever. And I'm sure experienced programmers know how to do that easily, but for us it's a whole new challenge. So we'll see where that goes. It might end up just being the underpants, or maybe the socks too, although you can sort of see his socks from time to time. So
yeah, I guess
that might come back to bite us.
Well, I guess, I mean, it's the kind of mechanic that you have to kind of design from the start. Like, you have to build the whole game around it. If you build cutscenes with no customization options, then you will have to refactor a lot. Hopefully you're not at that stage yet, but yeah. I will follow Dumb Sherlock very, very, very closely and with much interest to see if you manage to actually change Dumb Sherlock's clothes. So yeah. But yeah, so actually, believe it or not, we're already near the end. But I've got some questions that are a little bit more introspective, and this is kind of, as I always say, I see these episodes as kind of memoirs, like indie diaries, I call them. And that means I have a few questions for you guys that might dig a bit deeper into the nature of what you're doing. And first of all, I want to ask the question that I ask every single game developer that comes into the show. Why are you guys making a game? What is it that drives you forward in this process?
I think it's bringing our creation to life without having to pass through gatekeepers in the traditional film and TV industry who usually say no. Games,
Mm-hmm.
we control the means of production, especially using Godot and other open source tools. So even though we don't have the background or experience, the tools are out there, and the path towards actually bringing our IP into the world is easier, I think, there than in television.
Yeah, I think as we said earlier, we wrote the original sitcom script just as something silly and fun and diverting from the horribleness of the world, and so this is a way to let people enjoy that yeah, we don't have to wait for a big company to say okay to it. We don't have to worry about censorship. Now's not to get into real world stuff, but now's a great time to
Yeah.
enjoy, indie content that a big company can't cancel if they don't like what you're saying. So
Yeah, I think it's particularly relevant to these days, less so when the episode comes out, but I think, yeah, we all know what we
fair.
were talking about. So, yeah, that was a bit of a nasty story. No, I think it makes sense, and it's actually the first time I hear it phrased this way, like the independence of being a game of doing a game by yourself and being game developers. I think that's a really, really valid point. And what would you say so far has been the toughest part of this whole journey, and what pushed you through it?
Um, uh, yeah, I think the toughest part, aside from, I think the game design is probably the toughest part because we're
Mm,
so used to writing within the strictures of television. It's a very different proposition in games. Sort of related to that, but separate, is some of the more like strategic stuff and understanding who the audience is and what that means for our game design and how to, in parallel, build the game while also building an audience. Never done that in television. Not quite sure how that all works.
hmm
So some of those like higher order strategic questions have been particularly difficult to work through.
Yeah, and I think you don't know what you don't know. So going into this, like we had an idea and we did some research and we spoke to other game devs and we got kind of a bit of a lay of the land. But until we started doing it,
Yeah,
there's
obviously.
no, again, I'm just going to repeat myself. There's no way to know what you don't know, and so it's definitely been a learning process, which is great. But there's a lot to learn.
That's true, yeah, and it's definitely true. Like, no matter how many tutorials or courses you do, until you actually have to build the thing, you don't really have a clear idea of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to implement. And all of the tutorials obviously want to be as accessible to as many people as they possibly can. But what happens then is that they tend to share very generic advice that might not apply to your specific case, and then when you're looking for much more specific guidance, then you either reach out to someone or you work it out by yourself. So yeah, it's very, very common, unfortunately. And yeah, well, to wrap things up a little bit, with a bit of a deeper question, even. As I mentioned, these are like diaries. You can see them as journals, I say. So if this were your final diary or journal entry, what is one message you would leave for other creatives like you? And we'll start from David.
Um, Boy, I'm thinking what I would actually say. I think something around just going out and doing it.
Mm,
Even if you don't have the experience, to work iteratively and don't let sort of perfection be the enemy of trying something cool.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if it was my, diary or journal, I would also probably write, don't read this. This is private. If you're reading this, even if I'm dead, I will know and I'll come and haunt you. Uh, but then I would try to pass on a similar message to David. Yeah, just go and do it and try it. It's no one else is going to make the thing that you would make. So you gotta find a way to do it.
Love that. It's actually a really, really good point. Something that not a lot of people think about is just it's that the sum of everything you've learned over the years, the sum of your experiences and such, is what you are today, and no one else is like you, even though you might feel that way, and what you're doing is uniquely yours. And that's what makes it unique. To repeat myself, just like you did earlier, Jeremy. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, totally. And it might not turn out the way you
yeah.
think it will from the beginning, but that's also, part of the joy and the discovery.
Exactly. Okay, well, David and Jeremy, it's been lovely having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. I really wish you all the best for Dumb Sherlock. One last thing that I have for you is some parting words actually from you guys. Where can other people find you? And if they do, what's the best way to support you?
Well, Dumb Sherlock exists on all social media platforms, so just go looking for him there. Dumb Sherlock, easy to remember. If you want to play our little sort of teaser version that we put together, it's not fully a demo, but you can find it at dumbsherlock.itch.io/demo. It's a very early version, so have a play. If you've got any thoughts, we're completely open to feedback, positive or negative.
Yeah, and we also have a Discord, which doesn't have many people in it now, but we would very much like to welcome in more people. We're happy to talk about the game there, our process, or just anything. We've got channels set up for everything, just waiting for people to be in them, including a couple sort of mystery channels where people can just drop a piece of evidence or a mystery they want us to solve, and we'll answer it as Dumb Sherlock. Also on our Blue Sky, we are on all the socials, but on Blue Sky especially, we do a lot of responding to people in the voice of Dumb Sherlock, and it's very fun because he's just an absolute idiot, and a lot of the time he's telling people about like different injuries he's had while investigating cases and blunders he's made along the way. So very silly.
Yeah, no, very silly indeed. Amazing stuff. And of course, I will put all these links in the description of the episode so that the listeners can check you out. But thank you so much again, David and Jeremy. It's been lovely having you on the show. Lovely bringing some new perspectives into the Indie Diarist every now and then from two TV writers who are now making a game. Again, wishing you all the best with Dumb Sherlock. And yes, I'll be following the development process very closely.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, great to be here.
This was great.
All right, friends, and that's a wrap on another episode of the Indie Diarist podcast. That's episode 79 with David and Jeremy. Thank you guys so much for coming to the show and for getting in touch in the first place. This was a lovely 30 minutes together, and wishing you the best of luck with Dumb Sherlock, really. So, listeners, you've listened through to the end. That is not something to underestimate, and I love that. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the show, leave a rating, 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever you want. Maybe not 2 stars. Wouldn't really enjoy that, and the algorithm wouldn't like that either. So yeah, but you do you, I guess. There are other ways to support the show as well. If you want to, if you like what I'm doing, and if you want to keep me going, you can go on theindiediarist.com and find all of the links to leave donations or subscribe to my Patreon and follow me on social media. That is the single smallest thing you can do. Also joining the Discord community. That is a lovely and growing place right now. There are a couple of updates that I want to share with you now as we are closing the episode. One is I've relaunched my Patreon tier, so you can go to patreon.com/theindiediarist. I've kind of revamped them a little bit. There are some benefits that used to be there, but also some new stuff as well, and I've kind of streamlined things a lot more. You'll see it. There's only 3 tiers now, and they go from the indie supporter to curator level, and there's a lot of exciting stuff there, including access to my planning documents for the YouTube channel in advance. That is very exciting. And speaking of patrons, I want to shout out to Peleg. You are an amazing supporter. Thank you for supporting me all this time, my friend. And I hope that you enjoy what I'm doing for many, many, many more months or maybe years to come. But now, I think it's a wrap. So I'll speak to you in the next episode. Bye-bye.